All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Looks good.
Yep. Perfect. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Sana Talwar. I'm first and foremost a developer and will always be a developer, but just with an added passion for cybersecurity. Today, I wanted to talk to you all about cybersecurity, like what it really means and why more women should be involved, because I'm tired of being one of the very few women in the room. Um, how to get started with the field, and some resources to like help you get started. So on that note, I wanted to start out with a funny little meme just to get everybody in a good laugh and going. I think this is one of the funniest ones we have, or like I've seen. I'm sure all of you have heard about the infamous term cybersecurity, but like, what does it really mean? And like, I feel like it has essentially become kind of like a buzzword. Everybody wants to add cyber on something, or everybody wants to make sure they're cyber secure. And I've seen so many job descriptions that asks you for like a cybersecurity expertise, but like, what does that mean? I say that because whenever somebody mentions cybersecurity or I just hear that term, it's so completely vague. It could literally mean anything. And in terms of like even like a computer science degree, you would assume somebody with like a computer science background knows how to program or like knows some kind of like development role or like has that kind of experience or exposure. But within the cybersecurity realm, there's no one definitive thing that adds up to cybersecurity. Um, So, what is cybersecurity really? First and foremost, I think that it is very, very important in the world right now. Every company is getting hacked. And I feel like the question is even more relevant now of not when somebody or someone will get hacked, instead of like if somebody can get hacked. On that note, Equifax was hacked in 2017, had a big data breach with about 147 million people exposed. And if you don't know what Equifax is, it's like a credit bureau. And if you are an adult before 2017, more likely than not, your data was breached within that hack. Target on Black Friday in 2013 had a hack where 70 million people were exposed for their like names and like phone numbers, credit card information, and it was 70 million people is a lot. And same with Google. And Google Plus was hacked in 2018. That led to 52 approximately million people's data exposed. And Google Plus, if you have a Google account, a Gmail account, you would know Google Plus has been shut down since then because of that one significant bug in their code. Um, it's not, I feel like cybersecurity is not only detrimental to like a company or an enterprise, but to you, because like I go to Target every so often. I use Google products every like here and there. So like it's cybersecurity, even if like a company's hacked, it definitely impacts you in some kind of way. Um, Also on that note, Facebook used to store their passwords in plain text from 2012, and this information was only exposed in 2019. So for those 7 years, Facebook stored all of their passwords for like hundreds of millions of people, plain text on one of their servers, which like thousands of employees had access to. So cybersecurity, and I'm going to read this off the slides, means ensuring that your cyber systems perform their intended function and nothing else. And nothing else is the important part of it. So let's say your server needs to perform a function. Cybersecurity makes sure that there's protocols in place that nothing else can be done except for that, just to keep it secure. Some of the cybersecurity fundamentals are the CIA triad, not the government agency CIA, just CIA, that stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability of cyber systems. So confidentiality means limiting access to information. So let's say your email server or like your email account only has access to you. There's no root access or admin access that's enabled that would give an attacker or an adversary access to that. That's confidentiality. Integrity is assurance that information that you get is accurate and trustworthy. So let's say you're reading something off of a Women Who Code website, right? How do you know that's actually what they said? That's where cybersecurity comes in terms of integrity. That's why they have websites, or like, let's say you get an email. How do you know that it's from like the correct sender and that's what they actually sent you? That's covering integrity. And availability is definite and reliable access to your access your information and only by authorized people. So let's say you want to make sure you have cybersecurity implementations in your server so it doesn't come down by any sort of measures. It's always available when it needs to be. And that all leads into this profession that I'm kind of a part of, we're trying to be a part of, and I'm the first one to say I'm a beginner at it. I'm still learning, called ethical hacking, which is specialization in penetration testing and in other testing methodologies that ensure security of an organization's information systems. And I go on in that in the next slide. So ethical hacking, and I want to emphasize the word ethical, can be split between two sub areas, which is a red team and a blue team. So let's say a red team would be in the offensive space and a blue team is in a defensive mindset. So in a red team, experts would attack systems and try to break into defenses. And a blue team is on the other hand, where they would maintain internal network defenses against cyber attacks and threats. So basically, a red team would stimulate attacks and exploits that test the blue team's security effectiveness, basically. And within the red team, there's so many different career points or so many different things you could do, just like a general pen test, which would mean a penetration test is pretty much like how the word says penetration. You're trying to get inside a system by one way or another, by one means or another. Black box testing is something where you have a system that you have no information about. Let's say you plug in an Ethernet cord and then you figure out how you would maneuver the system from there and on forward. Social engineering can be really, really fun. And it could be something along the lines of, you've seen it probably in movies where, let's say like I go into a building with like a pizza or like a cake and be like, hey, this is for gym and third floor. I need to get to the third floor. And you would make sure that you have like a way to socially engineer people to get you access to a space that you need privileged information from, or that you have targeted. And web app scanning falls in the category of like web pen testing, where you're trying to see what websites have secure, insecure code that you can get access or information from. On the other hand, blue team is on the other hand of like damage control and incident response. So if there is like unauthorized access in your system or your network, right, blue team is the one who's going to be combating that. Or you could be threat hunter, so you either scrape or do research to see what like the newest attacks or exploits could be, and make sure those are prevented in your system. And also digital forensics, which is kind of like a reverse engineering tool. And it's similar way of like forensics for like how the police does it physically. It's like you have a system that has already been compromised. You would go in after it's been compromised, just like reverse engineer your way from like to see how the exploit got started, how the machine was vulnerable, and figure out how to prevent it for the next time. Any questions on that front?
I have one, Sana.
Okay.
So these red teams and blue teams, is this something like within a company, if they have like a cybersecurity team, they'll be broken up into these designations?
Yeah, so it's enterprise specific, but yeah, so you're either in an offensive role or a defensive role.
Is that something that people tend to specialize in?
Yes, I'm trying. I think currently I've been doing some blue team work. I want to get into more red team working. These are like common terms that actually are used in it, like corporate
Got
work.
it. So if I were to talk to other people at other companies, most likely they would also be like, yeah, I'm on the red team or on the blue team, and that would mean this.
Yeah.
Interesting. Just a reminder, if anyone has questions, please throw them in the chat.
Yeah, and on that note, I do want to say ethical hacking is only ethical if you have consent to do it. So this is my like little 5-second PCA. If you want to employ any of these like techniques you found through research, and a lot of them are available just like with the Google search. And if you want to try them in real life, please make sure you have written consent to do so, because there are hefty laws to prevent this kind of thing. But I'm not promoting hacking in any way unless you have physical permission to do so. Just want to throw that out there. Yeah, so in that note, these are some of the 10 most popular jobs in like cybersecurity that I've seen. And this goes back to the fact how like cyber is so vague. This could literally, all these careers still fall in the cybersecurity category, but they're so different from one another. So I kind of mentioned what a digital forensic analyst would do, go back in recovery and find like a reverse engineer a system to see what really happened when they were compromised. Network pen testers, which is number 2, could be like you're actually scraping the network, you're using like active IPs, trying to figure out what other IPs are active in the network and trying to gain access and possibly do privilege escalation, which is kind of what our demo talks about later. Or, sorry, my point is that none of this is actually like taught in school. So security goes from like entry level from like an application pen tester to a literal like CISO or like a technical director in security.
A CISO?
CISO, yeah, and that's in number 10. And none of this was really taught in school. I've been trying to focus in security since my freshman year of college, and I just graduated undergrad, and like 90% of my security knowledge that I have, which is very beginner still, is from like outside research and outside projects that I had to do. And it's just, I think it's sad. And I think one of the reasons I wanted to do this talk is because I want to break that barrier of cybersecurity. It is not that difficult, and it can be very accessible if you have the right resources. One of the things that are not mentioned here that could also include cybersecurity is just a simple like cybersecurity engineer that develops like code securely. So you can still just be writing code, but in a secure way. And I can confirm, at least where I'm from and the few friends that I know, writing code securely is not really taught as much as I would like even in like computer science majors, because that's like a one big thing. Because I would say like a software engineer writes the code, then like a security engineer comes in, does a code review, and all that jazz. And I feel like there is a gap in between those two things, and those two roles to some extent need to be combined, or like they need to be permeable in some respect. Careless code is always one of your biggest like security flaws. For example, there's an exploit called buffer overflow, which is a process that tries to store data beyond like a fixed length buffer. And this vulnerability has been exploited time and time again. It still exists and it still persists. And it's mitigated or covered by like you validating your input, making sure like if you're getting input from a user, it's like it's in the right format. It's like making sure it's going to the right memory allocation, or sometimes like it's as simple as just making your variables final and not that can't be what's that word? They can't be like changed within the time frame of your program. So I would say it like cybersecurity again means lots of things. So this is one venture into it. On a fun little thing, one way to check if you personally have been hacked is by this like fun little website called Have I Been Pwned? This is my little thing to make sure you also don't click on any links that you don't know where they're going. So if you hover over it, don't know, on the bottom left, it does say like that's the right website, but it's my little thing to make sure that whenever you click a link that it's going to the right place, or open it in like some kind of safe environment so you're not being exploited by like a phishing, like a phished link. So this is a fun little website where you can put your email address and see how many breaches you have been possibly exposed in. And I have, if I can, one sec, I'm trying to, I'm not sure how to unpin this. Got it. So yeah, this is one of the websites or one of the emails that I put in, and it shows you exactly like, these are the breaches that my data was exposed in. Like LinkedIn had a breach where my email address and password is possibly exposed. And I would say what to do with this information is basically make sure, like, if you have been exposed in anything with your account, make sure you change your password very quickly or close the account altogether, and make sure your information is safe from there on forward. But yeah, this is like a fun way to know if like I'm assuming a lot of people have had their data breached and just like not been aware of it because they don't make it as public as I would like. But yeah, so what is like the appeal of cybersecurity? I would like, why would people want to do or enjoy cybersecurity? I think one of the biggest things is there's job security. Everything is on the internet or on a network or using a computer system. So there's always going to be security gaps and issues going forward with like the world that we are in today. This is one of the issues that's never going to go away as far as I can see in the future. There's a high pay, and there's also like scholarship incentives and a lot of like training programs going on right now because it is a buzzword and there is a need for cybersecurity professionals currently. So that really helps it being more lucrative. Also, you would say, I think it would be making a real impact, whether it's federal or corporate. I'm in the federal realm and I feel like my work is very mission critical and I do feel accomplished when I do it. And even in the corporate world, there's so many things as long as like you're securing people's like credit card information, or you're making sure like in like hospitals, the healthcare information is safe and making sure everything is compliant. So this like cybersecurity, no matter what industry you're in, is going to be impactful. And I think in general, it's just very challenging and enjoyable. I always like problem solving, which is why I was also geared toward like comp sci and then security. And in college, I had the additional challenge of like learning security outside of my classes, outside of like what anything I could find on Google, because a lot of it is just you doing practice and like talking to people and making sure you get the right resources, because it's not just given at you in like the degree that I thought it would be like, yeah. And then one of the things I think deters women's is like there's not enough role model. This is kind of similar to the cybersecurity or the computer science equivalent of the lack of women in computer science. It furthers down into cybersecurity for sure. I feel like at some points it can be like an inherent boys club and the black hoodie hacker image that everybody has. Like, I don't go into work, wear a black hoodie and like type furiously at my computer. It's definitely not like that. And I feel like that's like stemmed within like our cultural and social expectations. I think we need to like break that barrier. And in a lot of cases, I feel like there's a gap between outreach versus retention. So there's lots of like organizations for like women in security, women in infosec, but like how much of that environment is really inviting, or how much is that really putting the pipeline through to the cybersecurity like professional world? I haven't seen any data that corresponds to that yet. So I think that's also a problem. And there was this NBC article that talked about cybersecurity, and it mentioned that girls are being told loudly, you're not invited. And this was actually based on a certain scenario of this guy going into a computer networks class in high school. And there was like about 25 to 30 boys in that class and one girl. And honestly, he should have just asked me, because I took a computer networks class in high school and I was the only girl between like 15 to 20 boys approximately. And even in college, like I was one of like 3 or 5, maybe like I think 5 was the maximum I'd ever seen any female in any of my like specifically security classes. So it still like is a really big problem. And this chart just symbolizes like the percentage. So basically Cybercrime Magazine did an analysis and they say that there's still 3.5 million unfilled like jobs, and still only like in 2019, there was only 20% of females in the field, which I mean, that's pretty low. Like we can do better, guys. We can all come together and do better. And yeah, this brings me into my intro to cyber war games and a little introduction to Linux demo.
Before we move on, could we answer some questions?
Oh yeah.
So one of the most popular topics that's coming up right now in the chat is, what are your suggestions for people who would be interested in getting into this field?
I would say like practice on your own. I have some resources at the end. And the number one thing, I'm going to emphasize it here also, learn how to learn how to use a terminal and Linux come in and get equipped with Linux systems. And then on top of that, there's a ton of books and a ton of online vulnerable machine trainings that can lead you the way.
Is there a particularly good city or area where there's more cybersecurity jobs?
I'm biased. I'm based out of the DC area, and I do work in like the federal cybersecurity realm because that was just like something I wanted to do. And here in my area specifically, it is very, very popular to be a cybersecurity professional just because all of the government is here and we need to be as secure as possible. But in general, like any tech company needs security professionals. So in my perspective, DC is a really big area for that. But overall, I think you can find it anywhere.
Got it. So do some practice on your own, read up if you can. This is a question just from me, I'm curious. Could you explain for us what a like cybersecurity interview would look like? I'm curious how similar or dissimilar it is from like a software engineering interview.
Yeah, so there's no technically like whiteboarding in a security interview. They talk, the interviews that I've done have been on interview questions like testing my security fundamentals. So I've had the CIA triad question a few times, talking to them about
Sorry,
encryption.
what's that?
So I had
Oh, the CIA question.
Yeah,
Okay.
the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, I think I mentioned. That's very big in security. I still use it in some like in a conceptual way in my work. There's always questions about encryption. So there's like I think one of the biggest questions is, so if you write www.google.com on your web browser, what happens in the background? All of that is protected by cybersecurity. How do you know you're actually going to google.com and it's not like a fake website that somebody put up? Another question I've gotten a lot is the black box question. So let's say if you were given a black box that you don't have no information about, how would you hack into it? That's a pretty big question, or like that shows you like the steps of like how you do like reconnaissance, do some research, do discovery, maybe like build an exploit and go through that like pathway of like how you would actually like force your way or into like make the machine vulnerable.
So that makes sense. So what I'm hearing is that it leans more heavily on problem solving, specifically in the security realm.
Right.
So knowing the lingo, knowing the kind of basics of the security levels for like, as you were saying with the black box, like what are the basic things they're going to want you to get into, and then can you think creatively to come up with other ways?
Yeah, and some experience in like scripting languages like Python or Bash is also useful, I would say.
Scripting languages. Okay, that's good to know. This question, we're kind of on this topic, but just to ask it specifically, are there any other things that you would recommend for someone to put on a resume if they're going for a cybersecurity role? Especially if they're maybe not, I think we're asking specifically for people who either just have maybe like a CS degree or like programming backgrounds, but not specifically security.
Yeah, so I would recommend specifically security projects. So I have done stuff with Raspberry Pis and Arduinos. It's like a $30 kit. You can go in and it's like a hardware hacking kind of way. You set it up and you make it vulnerable. And then you like find your way to do it. That's a personal project. Another personal project is hosted by this program called like Metasploitable that have like vulnerable virtual VMs, virtual machines basically. And if you don't know what virtual machines is, I would look that up. It's like on the level of like a container that like uses like the kernel of your system, but it's not connected to it. It has a different OS altogether. But and those are available almost like everywhere on Google. So like you have like a virtualized Windows box or like a Linux box, and that's already vulnerable, and you need to find ways to like exploit it somehow. So those are like actual, like those are as close as you can get to a real world or like real life experience to ethical hacking while being like compliant of security.
Right. And that gives you something to put on your resume so that when you're going in, you may not have the professional experience, but you're able to demonstrate that you've done some of these projects.
Yeah. And I have those listed at the end too, like some links to that has like.
That was my next question. Okay. So those we'll go over those at the end in the resources. One other quick question, because this came up, and I think you have a good answer. Could you explain what a capture the flag is?
Oh yeah, so capture the flag. So cyber war games is a type of like capture the flag. So there's two types. One is a Jeopardy style and one is a cyber war game style where the cyber war games would go into like there's an actual like server or a machine that you go into and maneuver your way through. And a Jeopardy style is where it's kind of like a Jeopardy. There's all these questions in different categories and different levels. So there's always a category about like cryptography. So there's like different challenges. Let's say there's 5 challenges. One would be about possibly like a binary like issue or like a password hacking problem. So there are all these problems like split into different categories that you can solve and get points. And it's always a competition and to see what team or person can solve like the most challenges in like a given amount of time. So it's always like it's pretty much a game that helps you problem solve and also uses like security tools and security like elements on it. Everything is very basic on the terms. And I think they're really fun. I would recommend it a lot.
Nice. That feels like a great segue into Intro to Cyber War Games.
Yeah, and also you can put CTFs on your resume. I have, and everybody I know has too. So that is considered some kind of experience too.
Very cool.
Okay, so again, cyber war games. This is my intro to like a basic like Linux demo as well. So why do I do this? Again, cyber is complicated and challenges. There's like new vulnerabilities and attacks found every day and new patches every day. And I feel like there's a current skill deficit. And again, I feel like the current training is kind of boring, it lacks interaction, and education isn't up to its par that it should be, in my opinion. And yeah, so for those of you following along, if you have, we asked you to download PuTTY if you have a Windows machine. Can I get a little comment if you are following along, just like I'm gonna try to follow along, like a yay or a nay? Or you can just watch, that's okay too. I just want to make sure that if people are following through that I address if they have any questions.
I see a couple of yays. You could also throw a yes in your participant chat as an option. So yeah, we have a couple.
Okay.
So if you have questions, yeah, there's quite a few actually. So if you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat or wave a hand, do whatever you need to do and we'll get them addressed.
Yeah. So if you have a PuTTY machine, I will pull it up right here. You would need to put a host name as leviathan.labs.overthewire.org. And I got this off actually the Over the Wire website. This is public information. All of them have walkthroughs. So this is very, if you like don't get this presentation for somehow at the end, you can just Google this very quickly and get all the information that you need.
So before we move on, could we just do a quick, what is PuTTY and what would someone use it for?
That's a great question. So PuTTY is pretty much like a SSH terminal that for Windows that lets you get into like a server that's hosted like offsite. Yeah, this is on port 2223. And then if you have a Mac, you can follow this command in your terminal, ssh-p for port, the port, and then this link at overthewire.org. So there's 7 levels to this game. So every single time you're just gonna have to log in again to like a new level because you find a password for that level. And the data for each level can be found in home directories and you can look at them in Etsy Leviathan password. And I will demonstrate all that in 1 second. Hopefully everybody has logged in or has like the option to log in right now. So the first level is just Leviathan 0 and password is Leviathan 0.
And there are options to ask to go slower and go faster in your participant chat. This feels like a great example of a time that we can use those if you're so inclined. I'll try to keep an eye out for them.
Okay. So now that I have my login screen, I'm just gonna log in the first stage. And again, on Linux, the password doesn't show up, but if you are typing, it sees that you're typing. Okay, so I'm logged into Leviathan 0. If anybody needs more time, please let me know. Okay, so some like basic commands of Linux is pwd, which is a print working directory. It shows you what path you're on currently. ls, list the current files in that directory, and change directory would change your pathway. So let's say there's a folder within your directory that you're in, you can do cd to that specific folder and get into that directory. I will show you that right now. So pwd, if we do, it says we're in Leviathan 0. If we do ls, currently there's no files listed here. And then I could, if there was another folder in here, I could cd into it. So on that note, so our goal here is to go from one level to the next and find the password for the next level, which basically is another like another way of saying like privilege escalate. So you have one barrier, you cross it, and you go to the next and get the highest privileges as you can. So I have some commands listed that I think we should try. So these are some of the first steps I would go on in this. So ls list all files, ls dash, my bad, I had a little goof, but so ls dash a with the flag a lists all the hidden files, ls dash l lists all the permissions. So let's see if in this case, if there's any hidden files. ls dash a. Okay, cool. So we have a few hidden files in here, and we can also combine flags. Let's say I want to do ls dash al. That's also probable. And we can see here that just the .backup file has it's the only one that we have access to as Leviathan 0. So in that case, I don't know what .backup is. So I would use something like file.backup to check what kind of file it is. And in this case, it's not actually a file, it's a directory. So here I would use the cd command to change directory into .backup and see what we have going on there. And again, I'm going to use the ls-al command. I use this command at least 2 times every single level. So you're going to get really comfortable with ls pretty soon.
And just to say it again, ls just lists everything that's in the current folder or the current directory.
Yeah. And it looks like in this folder, the only thing we have access to is bookmarks.html. And I could run a quick file command in there too.
Sana, before you move on, could you explain also, I think I know the answer, but this isn't my forte either. How do you know just by glancing at it which ones you have access to and which ones you don't?
Okay, so yeah, so in this part of the ls-al, so the L flag lists all the permissions to it. So on the left here is the owner of the file, and on the right is the person who has the access to the file. So in Leviathan 0, we have read, write, and execute commands right there.
Which are the dr, wxr, etc.
Is my, okay, yeah, it's like my cursor's moving a little slower. And then let's say for this like dash bash underscore logout, there's only read write access, and that's only given to root. And is there a question on PWD?
Yes.
PWD is print working directory, so it will list where you are in the system. So right now we're at home, Leviathan 0, and in the .backup directory or folder, either way you want to look at it.
All right, we good.
Yeah, so you see that there's the file is a ASCII file, which basically means there's text in it for some reason. So what I can do here is use the command called cat. It's right here. It displays the content of a file. And if I try to run cat bookmark.html, it gives me a lot of information, which is problematic because just looking through it, it's going to be very, very hard to find wherever the password is stored. So when that happens, you can use another command called grep, which is global regular expression print, and it processes text line by line and prints any lines that match a specified pattern. Basically, it's a control F. But within like a terminal. So if I cat the command again and pipe it, and piping means you can run 2 commands at the same time to grep password. So in this case, what I'm doing is printing out whatever's in the bookmarks.html file and control Fing password or using grep. And I enter and I get the exact line where password is mentioned. So here the password is mentioned. The password for Leviathan 1 is Rio Gem I8M.
So then can we go over that step just one more time? Because I think a few people are catching up and there was some juicy stuff in that command.
Yeah. So like I mentioned before, cat is a command that displays all the contents of a file. So this file was gigantic, as you can see, with like the scroll bar. And that was the point of it, to like hide the password within the file.
Right.
So, and this pipeline command, or not command, but like with the pipe, you can run two commands at the same time. So I ran all the contents of the bookmarks.html file with the grep command for just the specific word password. And again, basically what it does is goes through the bookmarks.html file and control Fs for password.
Got it. So we were making an assumption that in this easiest level, the password for the next level is going to be somewhere near the word, the text password.
Yeah. And also you could have like grepped for Leviathan 1 or anything of that sort, and it probably would have populated as well. Because again, this was the only file in the entire system that we had. So I'm assuming the password had to be somewhere in here.
Is that a good rule of thumb when you're doing something like this, that if you're looking for a password, you use the text password, or like in this case, since you're doing like Leviathan and you know that each level is going up by 1 numerically, you could just be searching for that text. Is that something that you would do in a normal cyber war game or CTF?
Initially, yeah, that would be my first step on most things. And this is like, again, a beginner friendly one. So it will give you not the easiest solution, but like, it's pretty like.
Step 1, right. The Occam's razor answer.
Yeah, so to go into Leviathan 1, I'm just gonna duplicate this session, log in as Leviathan 1.
While she's logging in, could we also get a quick check-in for anyone who's following along? If you need a second, if you're ready to go to the next level, if you're blocked on anything, feel free to use the chat or one of the yes, no, slower, faster in the chat window.
Okay. Yeah, I accidentally copied the little quotations too, so make sure your password is just what it needs to be. Okay. Any questions so far?
I think we're good.
Okay. So in this level again, I'm gonna run the ls-al command again and see what's in this directory, right? So here it looks like I have permission to, Leviathan 1 has permission to this, something called check. I don't know what check is, so I'm gonna run the file command and see what it is. Okay, so it looks like check is an executable.
And what's executable?
Yeah, executable means any file that that runs. So let's say if you want to go on like Google Chrome, and Google Chrome is an icon on your desktop, you would click on it, and that's an executable file that opens up Google Chrome. And in the same way, in a Linux environment or like in a terminal, how you would open an executable is // What are the slashes? I always get
forward.
Yeah.
I'm never sure.
/ check just to run the file. Okay, so it's asking for a password. I don't know what the password is, so I'm just gonna guess it to be 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know what it is. I'm gonna see what happens if I guess it incorrectly. Okay, it basically just tells me that I have a wrong password, which I assumed anyway, because it was a bad guess. So yeah, in level 2, I have some more commands that I would run while I have this up here. So the first command I would run is string. It views all the human readable characters within any file. So if I run strings on check, so it shows me all the human readable characters in this file, right? So it goes on, if I go up, it will show me like, this is like the output prompt right here, another output prompt, and all these random characters that are like embedded in the file. So it's like running on like a Debian server and all these. I'm assuming these are system calls, but in general, if I look, oh, also there's a string compare, which is handy dandy.
Why is it handy dandy?
I'm assuming since it's a password compare, they're asking for a password. They already have one stored somewhere. So I'm assuming they're comparing my input to something already stored in the file.
Got it. So you think that that's part of the password. Quick questions. What commands do you use to see this?
Strings, space check. Where is she?
And then what was the line after, so I think this was in Leviathan 0. We did the cat bookmarks to grep, and then we changed the password string. What was the next step from there?
Oh, you just copy the password and log in as Leviathan 1. And that's your new password for Leviathan 1. I can.
Let us know if that answered your question, Marie.
Okay, so this command didn't really get me to the password that I need to go to the next level. So I'm gonna try this command called strace. And also on a side note, all these commands are me Googling. It's like, how do you look up a file on Linux? How would you open the syscalls for a file in Linux? This is all Googling, this is all discovery and reconnaissance. Yeah, so strace, and then for strace, you have to run the program because strace captures all of the syscalls, captures and records all system calls made by the process and signals received by the process, which I will demonstrate here. So you do strace while you're running check. All right, so this is, again, looks like a whole bunch of gibberish, but and this, at the very end of it, it says it writes a password. So pretty much like it outputs a password and then it takes in a password right here. And I'm gonna assume since there's 3 characters read in, so there's 1, 2, 3, 3 read commands, the password is a 3-digit or like there's 3 values in the password. And again, it shows you exactly like if it doesn't compare or if the password isn't the correct one, it tells you like the wrong password. But other than that, I don't see anything fancy in here. It's just, again, a lot of syscalls and like the assembly and probably the kernel of the server or the code.
Okay. So before we move on, can I rephrase what I think you just did and you can correct me if I'm wrong? Okay. So what I think just happened is you have an application called check that you have access to. So we're like, we know this is going to be somewhere that we want to be. And that check has a password associated with it. So we need to be able to figure out what the password is before we can run it. And, we don't have access to anything else. So one of the options in your cybersecurity tool belt is that you can essentially look under the covers to see what happens when you try to run the check program. And what I told you is it's like you were able to find the place where it's actually writing to console, which is the right method. It has the text password, which we saw because we clicked on it first, and then the variable that we know we're replying to. And just by looking and seeing, like kind of like using our human intuition, we're like, okay, it's reading 3 characters and it's checking to see if these 3 characters are equal to something.
Yep.
Okay.
That's exactly.
Is there any other information in here that we're missing? I mean, I see like an =1. And I'm curious if =1 is just like a true.
Yeah.
Okay, so the =1 doesn't mean the password is 111. It means that in this case, that's just a little bit of Linux lingo or whatever the script underneath is. And it's saying that if they didn't match, it would be a 0. And if they do match, it's a 1.
Right. Yep.
Learning so much. I hope that helps. Please, everyone, keep chatting in the chat if you have questions or need things reiterated again. Question, what is 1024?
So I'm assuming it is like this read character can hold anywhere from 0 to 1024 bits. And like that's the memory allocation for this character.
Which makes sense because it's a single character.
Yeah. Okay. On that note, there's another little tool called ltrace that kind of does a similar thing, but it intercepts and prints system calls executed by the program. It's a little bit different, and I'll show you how. So So strace gave us some important information that I'm pretty sure I'm going to assume that's 3 characters now. And then if I run ltrace on check, also almost does a very similar thing, but a little different. Here we go. So yeah,
Sorry.
no, it's okay. So here it kind of shows you like the calls of the system. So you printf password, you get 1, 2, 3 different characters, and then you string compare those 3 characters to sex, which is going back to our previous point in our beginning of our conversation. All the funniest or like the insecure passwords are weird innuendos.
Or just straightforward ones in this case.
Yeah. Yeah, so okay, now that we know that this is our input is being compared to sex, let's run check. So if you run check and our password is sex, it gives us shell access. So, and here's where we don't know what we are, or actually, I know where we are. So we're in Leviathan 1 still, but another handy dandy command that is, it's called who am I, which you can check who's actually running this thing, right? So if you do who am I am Leviathan 2. So now that it's like privilege escalated me with shell access because there was because we were able to get the password to this script, I am now Leviathan 2. And with that information, okay. Sorry, I'm like, this is like, I've done this so many times, it's like hard to kind of explain it in like slow form.
Could we back up and just one more time explain, because I think this was interesting, the difference between strace and ltrace?
Oh yeah, yeah. So strace captures all the recorded system calls made by the process, and ltrace actually intercepts and prints like the system calls that's actually like executed by the script.
So would it be correct to say that strace captures the inputs?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, versus ltrace is what's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if we go back to my initial slide, it says that this is all on the OverTheWire, like where this Wargame is hosted website. It says that data for all the levels can be found in the etc /Leviathan pass folder. So with that knowledge that we have, now that we're back, I am Leviathan 2. So on that note, I should have access to the Leviathan 2 password file. So if I cd into etc/Leviathan_pass and do an ls command, so these are all the passwords stored in this directory. So if I want to cat out the password for Leviathan 1, which we already have, I can't do that because I am Leviathan 2 currently. And then if I want to cat the password for Leviathan 2, it's right there. Yeah, and then again, you would just copy this password, duplicate your session, and log in as Leviathan 2.
So when you're moving between these, because it's a question before, you're just right-clicking on the screen and using duplicate session. And then you can just type in the next level name as your username. So in this case, we're in Leviathan 2, and then it will ask you for the password, which you now know.
Yeah.
And you knew to go to that folder because that was something that we had at the beginning. It's that etc/Leviathan_pass, which I can put in the chat so we remember it.
Yeah. And this is where all the passwords for all the levels are stored. And we're trying to get access to these folders, but only the user, like, so Leviathan 1 is only has access to the password file on Leviathan 1, and so on and so forth. But yeah, this folder comes in a lot, so we're going to be accessing this a decent amount. Okay, so now we want to move from level 2 to level 3, and I'm going to preface this one as saying this one's the most complicated one for whatever reason. So just please bear with me for this one. This is a little difficult to go through.
If this one's difficult, can we take a 20 seconds to just take a deep breath and let anyone catch up who's working? I'm not even following along, and I'm just intellectually working very hard to keep up. So And if anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat. Sorry, Sana, already shared the slide deck because I figured for some folks it might be a little bit easier to follow along. I'll share it one more time. Well, I'll share it a million more times, but I'm going to share it again now, just in case anyone wants to catch up or needs some of the information available. This is pretty cool.
Yeah. Again. So a little preview for this one. This one's the hardest one in my opinion, so please bear with me on this one.
Before you do that, could you list could we go through those last couple commands you used?
Yeah, so I'm gonna keep reusing them again. So list file is ls, and ls has flags called -a, which is all the hidden files that you could see, and L, which are all the permissions of each file. So if I just do ls, it shows me that there's one file, right? But if I actually do ls-a, it'll show me all the hidden files, which are all of these. And if I do -a and L, it shows me all the permissions given with all the files in the system and in this current directory.
Got it. So then, can we try making the page a little bit bigger?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think that's a little easier to read.
Yeah,
it's tough because it's at the bottom, but it's still a little bit better.
Okay.
That will help.
I'm gonna see if I know how to change the text. I feel like my college professor right now.
Make it as if we were doing it for our parents. You look at their phone and there's like one letter per page.
Appearance. Okay, got it. I'm gonna change it to 14. I got it quicker than my college professor, so I feel better about myself.
Yay. Should have thought of that earlier, but I'm glad we did now.
Yeah, my bad. I'm sorry, guys. This is still learning. But yeah, so okay, in this Leviathan 2 directory, we see that we have access to the print file file. And one of the other handy dandy commands that we have is to check what kind of file something is. So I'm just going to check again what print file is. Okay, it is another executable. And like I mentioned before, how you run an executable in terminal is // the file name.
Okay. Sana, could you cover again why we don't use anything that belongs to root?
Because we don't have access to root. Root is the admin of the system. So first of all, we don't have access to it. Second of all, if anything you run as a root is unchangeable kind of thing. So you only give root permission if you have if you're trying to do something detrimental or something like important, I guess is a better way of saying it.
Right.
Yeah, and one of the things about cybersecurity is you want to get the root privileges because the root has privileges to almost everything. But we don't cover that in this chat or in this war game at least.
Got it. So for this war game, we're not going to use it, but we know in the real world, if you were on a red team, one of your goals would be getting into root.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So after we ran this print file executable, we see that the usage of it is actually print file and you add a file name. So you give it a file to actually print something.
And we're basically using that to see whether things are executables or just text files, correct?
Yep. Yeah. Or whatever kind of files they are, so we know how to open them correctly. Yeah. So my first thought would be that in the etc folder, the Leviathan password file is just a normal file name. So one of my first steps would be when I first did this, I didn't think it would be that easy, but it was just fun to make sure that they didn't give it to us. So if I go into this directory, try to open the Leviathan 3 file, theoretically that should give me the password right away, but they know they're smarter than that, and they know that you can't have this file, and because this would be a really easy way to run this, right? So on that note, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to trace the program again and see what's actually going on and what's comparing. So I'm going to make a directory. So make dir, what it does is makes a directory, which is a folder in the temp folder, because this is not our server, so we only have access to read and write in temp. And I'm just going to call it Sana for now. Okay.
Okay, so
directory.
Sorry, that went fast.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to reset for a sec, we are now Leviathan 2. Congratulations, everybody. We were born as Leviathan 0, now we're Leviathan 2.
And all the
And
passwords are like at the end of my slide. So if you have the slides deck, you can just log into that session.
so if you have the slide deck, which everyone does, you can just cheat and go straight to this level. Congratulations for that. So now we're looking for the Leviathan 3 passwords that we can evolve as Pokemon yet again. And just to reiterate this, we know that there's an executable. I think I missed a piece because one of the things that we were looking for was that we wanted to run the print file executable. So again, this is like a program that can run, and we're going to pass in a file name, but you're not allowed to use the actual password because it's protected and we don't currently have the permissions. So instead, we're at this point have created a new directory, which is named Sana, of course, and we're going to use that in some way to like copy the file over, I'm guessing. I might have been looking ahead. So I actually found that out myself.
Yeah, pretty much that's like the gist of it. So the reason that we don't have access to Leviathan 3 is because we are Leviathan 2 and we don't have direct permission to it. But on that note, now that I made this temp directory, I can use this command called touch, which in like terms of Windows is just you right click and you create like a new file, like a new text file, right? So if you touch something in this directory, /temp/sana/ I'm going to call it path.txt. Okay. Now that I have that,
So the touch command, I know I'm slowing you down. The touch command just basically creates a file with nothing in it.
Yep.
And we give it the suffix because we're defining what type of file it should be.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then I'm going to try using ltrace again and run print file with path.txt. And this is basically just to see what's happening within the program and see if there's actually any vulnerabilities within it. Okay. So now that we see here, it uses the command access to access the text file that we provided. And what else does it do? Hold on. Okay. That's weird. Hold on one sec. No. Okay. I can't find what I was looking for specifically. But anyway, so we can see that it uses this function called access that tries to find pass.txt, but it's not really finding it. So it outputs, you can't have that file, and so on and so forth. So this is kind of a bummer. It doesn't really get us anywhere, except that it's using access. And I want to see now that we're here, I would want to see that if access could call on Leviathan 3's privilege, because as we mentioned before, so print file is actually owned by Leviathan 3, but Leviathan 3 has access to it. So I want to see if access can, we can use or leverage the privilege from the ownership of it.
Could you explain that one again? That you lost me a little bit there.
Yeah. So access is like a typical function that's trying to get the file and like print out the whatever's in that file, right? There's nothing in the file. It's not working. I'm not sure what happened. Hold on. I'm gonna run this. This is the one that also gives me a lot of issues because running a password.txt.
We like to suffer.
Yeah. What's the technical presentation without technical difficulties?
Is this a technical difficulty, or are you just hitting a problem-solving problem?
Yeah, it's.
Explain to us what you're trying to do.
Yeah. So in general, it wouldn't show you that. It would show you that there's nothing in that file or something along those lines. I don't know. It's like, It's reusing the system of the previous one.
There's some suggestions in the chat. Jocelyn pointed out, do you need to give it the full directory location? Louisa said, you are not putting the file name. And Emily said ltrace using print file, and then TMP sent a pass.txt.
Oh, there
Are
you
any
go.
of those helpful?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, my bad. I was in the wrong directory. So yep, thank you guys.
Good job, team.
Yeah. I was so confused. I was like, what am I doing wrong? And I've done this like so many times. Anyway, so yeah, there we go. That's what it does. So here we can see that bincat is trying to access pass.txt and using this command, right? So now that we know there's a bincat, and now that we know there's an access folder trying to access it. So here is something I want to see if can be exploited in the code. What happens if we put like a space in a file name? That's where my first thought would lead, because I want to see how the code is actually written, which I can't really see, but I want to see how I can like exploit this bug in the code.
So
yeah.
What makes you think that there's a bug here?
So bincat usually will need to like separate files. It can't handle spaces unless you specifically tell it to. That's like a known thing with bincat. And it was easily looked up by like a Google. I Googled it and I was like, what are some like bugs in bincat?
Probably a good time to mention that if you were working through this on your own without Sana's guidance, Google is probably your best friend for all of these.
The first time I did this, I Googled everything too. So we're in it together. Okay. So in that sense, I'm gonna try to make a file called and try to create like a symbolic. Okay. So another thing that Linux can do is like create symbolic links to different files. So if I do ln, which is a link, a symbolic link, or like also sometimes referred to as like a soft link to the Etsy / Leviathan pass _ Leviathan, and I'm looking for 3 to another random file. So temp.
And what do you expect this to do when you're making this symlink or soft link?
Yep, I will show you. 1 sec. Oh my God. Okay. This basically like locked me out of temp. Make dir touch pass.txt. Okay.
Is that because you didn't say you were putting it in temp, Sana?
Yep. Okay. And I'm gonna make another file called touch temp. I have it. Pass space word, let's say .txt. Okay, so this basically created a file that pass space word.txt. So if I run ltrace on /print file and /temp /sana /pass space word.txt.
I think just to say out loud, the slash that wasn't the same direction as the other, so I think it's the backslash, but don't quote me on that. We use that to escape the space because that's otherwise it won't be read as a space. And if you're not familiar with escaping characters, it's something that comes up a lot of times in normal expressions. So you use normal expressions a lot of times for like searching for text, like and trying to match against it. And a lot of times if there's a character that the system expects to mean something, so like a backslash, a forward slash, a space, there's a bunch of them. I'm not an expert on this by any means. you can use that backslash in front of it to tell the system like, hey, treat this as an actual character and not as a command.
Yeah. Okay. So this keeps like logging me out of temp, and it's not. I just created a file. Let's say touch pass.txt. Okay. Okay. Now that we have it, got it. So let's say if I create going back to the point, symbolic link to Etsy / Leviathan _ password / Leviathan 3 into temp / into, if I just do pass. Okay. That's weird. Anyway, so here, if you list all the files in here, it shows that pass that I just touched and created. Where did I do that? Oh, yeah, I created it right here. Has a symbolic link, or I guess Leviathan 3 has a symbolic link to this location. And hopefully if temp doesn't root out on me, because like temp is weird because we don't own it, it's somebody else's server, so it's locked me out already twice now, and it's they do like a regular cleanup of it periodically, and this happened to me yesterday too. So this was my bad. This level is very problematic in general. So if I do print file, and since I'm in the temp directory, I'm using the tilde to run the print file, and the tilde is pretty much look for anywhere within the directory to find a file called print file and run it. And then if I do pass, it should, dang it. Hold on. Okay, I'm so sorry, there's technical issues. This is my bad. This one locked me out twice.
It actually normalizes it, because when you do everything right, then I'm like, wait, I don't understand where we are. I am trying to follow along.
Okay, got it. Okay, I got it at the very least. Okay, so what I created was space between these files. And if I traced it, / print file password.txt. Okay, so if I look at the ltrace output of it, it goes in to try and find password.txt, and it says that there's a permission denied, and word.txt. There's no such file or directory. So it's looking at pass and text as different files. So I just created something, a file generically called pass, and did a symbolic link using this command right here to the Leviathan 3 password into pass. And you can see, like, when you list out all the files in your system, you can see that there's an actual like literal link to that password. And where did it go? And when I tried to do print out the password.txt file right here, it ignored the word.txt is no such file found right here, and still thought pass was an active file because it broke it down into 2 separate files. And here's the password for Leviathan 3.
And it broke it down to 2 separate files because of the space.
Mm-hmm.
Because and I think we'll hammer on this because I'm sure it's new to at least some people, if not all, space is a special character. When we're typing into the terminal here, space is expected to be something separate. And then when you have it in your password, like, remember we created it, we had to use the backslash because that escaped it. That's the term that we use when we're saying like, treat this as a text character, as an ASCII character, and not as a command. We were able to create it, but then we were able to fool the system by typing in access to a file that we were allowed access to, the pass space word, but it used, because it expects space to be a command and not part of the file name, it just ran it for pass.
Right. And I'm so sorry for all the technical issues. I'm This is not my server. And I got a little lost too.
Nothing to apologize for. In the spirit of time, do you think it makes sense to do one more level and then we'll talk about next steps?
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, so now that we're in Leviathan 3 with the password given, this one's a really simple one. Everyone after everything after that is also really simple too. So Leviathan 3, I go through all the steps from before, ls-al. I see that I have access to a file called level 3, and I can run file again on level 3, but I'm assuming, yes, it's another executable. And when I run it, it's asking me for another password. And let's say I try 1, 2, 3, 4. It's wrong. And here it kind of repeats and repeats one of the previous ones, where if I just do ltrace into /level 3 and enter a password 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is all again, the system calls up the system, it prints out enter password, it tries to get it. And now it string compares it to SNL printf. So I'm assuming this is the current password for the / or the check script. And if I tried that, printf, oh, shoot. Oh, level 3. Level 3, and enter password SNL printf. I've got shell again, and here again I would do who am I? I am Leviathan 4, and since I'm Leviathan 4, I have access to the Leviathan 4 password file, and I can simply cat it /Leviathan_pass /Leviathan 4. And there we go. I have password for Leviathan 4. And I'm going to cheat a little bit with the time. I thought this would go a little bit faster. I spent too much time on Leviathan 2. I'm going to show you guys one really quick. This is one of my favorite ones, and the next complicated one is Leviathan 6 through 7. Yep. And I'm just going to copy the password for 6 really quick. UGA. Leviathan 6. And the password is UGA 4LI. Oh. No, oh my God.
Does the username have a space in it?
Nope. My God. There we go. It took a whole minute. But again, in Leviathan 6 to go into Leviathan 7, I will do all of the same commands as before. I have access to this executable called Leviathan 6. And if I try to run it, it's asking me the usage of it is Leviathan 6 and a 4-digit code. And let's try 1, 2, 3, 4 again. And obviously it's wrong because it was just like a simple guess. So in this type of command, in this types of situations, I would say brute force would be one of the most useful techniques to do this. And
Really?
yeah, because there's only 10,000 combinations.
True. Computer can do that in a second.
And yeah, a computer can do that pretty quickly. And either you can write a bash script to do this quickly in the temp directory again and run that, or you can just use this and like a for loop literally in your
And that's just a shell command, basically saying it's anyone who's done programming has gone through for loops, I'm sure. So start at 0, 0, 0, 0 and increment the number by 1 and keep running it until it works.
Yeah.
Well, is there even an until it works? It looks like it will actually just, I didn't get a look at the shell script, but it will actually just run it all the way through to 9,999.
I will show you. It stops right before whatever the. Okay, so now it's just going into 10,000 attempts to see what happens, but I'll come back to it because it takes like a minute to literally a minute to do it. But yeah, I'm so sorry for the technical difficulty, you guys, but this is generally the basic gist of it. And these are all the passwords if you want to skip levels in any way. But this cyber game exercise is just to emphasize privilege escalation and show you some more like basic Linux commands. And I would say Linux and terminal usage is like the best start to get into cybersecurity. Yeah, and so these are some of the resources I found to get into like the community. I would say number one is finding like a good community. Some of the conferences I recommend are the Women in Cybersecurity Conference, Grace Hopper, RSA, DEF CON, and Black Hat are known as the hacker conferences. And there's also ShmooCon, which happens like regionally. These are some of the scholarships that I have found, and I was actually part of the CyberCore Scholarship for Service scholarship cohort. And these are mostly based on like college terms. Like I just graduated out of college, so these are the scholarship that I used or I found in my own time. If you want, I have some high school resources as well and some other resources now that I'm in the working force that I could share with you. And to practice, I would say start with OverTheWire. We just did partially of Leviathan. I would start with Bandit and then move on to other games. They have games specific to like cryptography, specific to web pen testing. And there's also Seed Labs, which has like virtual machines that shows you like exploits. So there's also like a meltdown inspector exploit, but there's also something as simple as like a buffer overflow or an SQL injection, and it shows you all the basic like attacks and concepts of security. On the Capture the Flag note, National Cyber League is for college students. There's also Pico CTF, and then if you just Google ctftime.org, there's also lots of events that are hosted daily and that are posted on CTF Time. And then VulnHub and Hack the Box would be after you have some exposure to security. These are very vulnerable boxes that have really good learning techniques and procedures that walk you through vulnerable machines. And on that note, yep, so now that it has done clearly so many attempts in brute force, within a minute or two, it was able to give us shell, and we can just say, who am I? I'm Leviathan 7. And within the same respect, you can cat out the password for Leviathan 7 here. But yeah, thank you so much for coming to this talk. This was kind of a lot. And if you need any more specific—
Let's talk next steps before we log off. So for one, I just shared Sana's LinkedIn. So you can go and connect with her there. I'll share it again in a wrap-up email that I'll send tomorrow, which will have all of the links. It will have the slide deck again. It will just basically all of the information. I shared the Slack link again, which I will also again share tomorrow. I'm always there. Come hang out with me. I just created a cybersecurity channel because I know that there's going to be a lot of questions that remain from this. So please go join it if you're interested in continuing this conversation, and we can consolidate a little bit there. Like if anyone has questions, if you're working through things, there was a lot of really good links here shared in the chat that probably went by a little bit fast if you were trying to also follow along. So we'll try to reconsolidate those and put them in the channel. So then one of the suggestions that I thought was really excellent is maybe we can update the slide deck with some screenshots as you're working through it, so that everyone can see like what the commands you're using are, what the outputs look like, and that might make it easier for everyone to follow along if you'd like to do this again on your own time, which I'm guessing a lot of you seem interested, you're probably going to want to. So I think I covered everything. So Slack, I'll put it one more time because that's what I do. I also shared my LinkedIn. I love friends. Come be friends with me. Yeah, and then Sun and I will chat a little bit more to figure out what else we can do. Maybe we'll have another one of these or a continuation, or even like a, I was gonna make a joke about a group therapy session, but like a group practice session to like work through them. I want to do it now. It seems super fun. And I think that's just about it. So thank you everyone so much for coming. Once again, all of this information, including the slide deck, will be in the Slack and also the wrap-up email. If you don't get the pre-emails or the after emails, it's because of your meetup settings. If you just go in and like click on your profile picture in the upper right-hand corner and go to your notifications, just turn on the emails from Women Who Code so that you'll get those. There's usually like, I send an email out before the event that just says like, hey, download PuTTY and like the Zoom link. But I'll send stuff in the wrap up as well. And slide deck is available. And this is being recorded, which I am now going to turn off because I think we're good.